What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. The dog days of summer and the content mines. Not too bad. A lot of good stuff this week. Feeling good.
No movies, just music and television, but quite a bit to talk about. I'm looking forward to getting into all of it. But before we dive too far, hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod or go to twitter.com, search at nostalgiapod, go to the link tree in our profile, follow us there as well, and then follow the link tree to listen to the podcast any way you want to if YouTube is not your preferred platform. But Dave, usually we talk albums, we'll talk news, talk about TV, movies, a lot of things that pop up. But we had to start today because Blackpink, Blackpink, Blackpink. They're coming. The album's coming in just a few weeks, dropping Pink Venom. What do you think about this single?
Straight to your dome like, bro, I love this song. Let's go. Blackpink in your area once again.
Man, upon first listen, I think the moment I felt like, okay, Blackpink is absolutely back, is when we get the 1 by 1, then 2 by 2 line, venturing back to Rihanna, and I'm like,
Exactly.
oh, they're confident, they're cocky, they're going for it. I love it. If you're gonna call Rihanna out in your song, if you're gonna interpolate her, fucking love it. What a look.
Interpolating her first single, add that.
Yes.
Quite the callback. That was Lisa, obviously, with that one. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype and anticipation for the Blackpink comeback because, as we've talked about a few times, Blackpink does not exactly release a lot of music. If you include, I counted this myself, if you include all of the Blackpink songs, their few features, and the solo tracks, this is the 30th Blackpink song in the 6 years of their existence as the biggest girl group in the world. They really take their time and keep it slight. But when they do drop these singles, especially these lead singles, they're just always bigger and badder and crazier than the last one. And I think Pink Venom is like just such a worthy successor to How You Like That and Kill This Love and Do. Like, it's just, it feels right in line with them. And I think the Blinks would have to agree because we had 90.4 million views in the first 24 hours for the music video, breaking Blackpink's previous high mark with How You Like That, the third highest mark, behind, of course, BTS's Butter and Dynamite. But after that, it's this song, rapidly consumed, and it'll probably be their one of the biggest K-pop drops in the U.S. in terms of like the Billboard Top 10. I think Top 10 is pretty safe at this point across the world too, not just in the U.S., which is crazy. But then again, they're popular for a reason. They make really catchy, really big tracks, and I think in this particular instance, Pink Venom is just a really big showcase for Jennie and Lisa in particular. Like, there's just tons of rapping from both of them on this, but different flows. And then the hook itself, I think, is incredibly catchy, and the way it's edited in the music video, cutting back frame to frame, it's like almost inviting you to rewatch the music video or rewind, trying to like see all the different imagery because it's so quick cutting. I think there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's just exciting every time we get something from them because it just feels like almost kind of like we're watching the modern day like Spice Girls or like some group like that, just this like meteoric rise, and the music just is fucking there. Like they just make these bangers every time, and they demand so much tension. And when they had that Coachella set that's like legendary now, everybody was there for
2019.
that, went to the festival. The hype is like, okay, Blackpink's arrived, but like, do they have the chops to really back this up? Well, yeah, they fucking do, because they're dropping songs like this, and you know that we're just gonna get straight heat in 3 weeks. So I just cannot wait to see where this group's gonna go. Pink Venom, man, what a banger! It's on our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist already at the top. So check that out.
Yeah, totally. I think if you like, on the surface, this song probably doesn't jump out as anything outside of the ordinary for Blackpink too. If you look at the producers, you look at the songwriters, it's a very familiar cast of characters led by Teddy Park, of course, who they work with on basically every song. But I think the beginning of the song, you hear the like traditional Korean string instrument, a little bit of a different flair, you know. So I think overall production wise, it's perhaps not quite as electronic as some of their other stuff. Certainly still trappy. Regardless, I think it's definitely a fitting uh, comeback for the group. And yeah, I really can't wait for Born Pink on September 16th. And they're about to go on the gigantic world tour as well, which does not have as many American dates as I would have liked. But uh, thinking about that tour, we'll see. I have to go to New Jersey or Canada. Those are the two closest ones for me. Tough.
Dave, do you have a favorite Blackpink member at this point?
I do. For a while, it was Lisa because she raps and dances really good. But I have to say, it's not Jenny at this point. I think just that like triple threat mixed with bad bitch energy is just pretty unparalleled in music right now.
She has just an awesome persona going with everything else. She's total package. This group just rocks though. Listen to Blackpink. Get excited for their new album in 3 weeks, like Dave mentioned. But Dave, why don't we switch gears, go to some albums here real quick, and let's actually do a little cleanup because we did not talk about the Black Thought and Danger Mouse album that came out 2 weeks ago now, Cheat Codes. And, I think there's a lot to be excited about on this record, but probably most of all, just getting Danger Mouse back producing rap music like full time, or at least like a full project. It's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. His first complete rap album he's produced in 20 plus years. Certainly a prolific producer, legendary producer at this point, but he has spread his talents around and worked with rock artists and worked with other rappers and done all kinds of stuff, really, you know. But I think more recently, it's like, what do people think of with him? Like the Black Keys, like Beck, like he's kind of all over the place. Gnarls Barkley's probably a bit in the rear view at this point, but yeah, to have 5-time Grammy nominated producer of the year, Danger Mouse, alongside the frontman of the Roots, Black Thought, sounds pretty obvious. And apparently they've actually tried to make this album happen for a long time. It used to be called Dangerous Thoughts way back in the day. Alas, they finally are here. And I think it probably makes sense too for Black Thought to do something like this because he's the past few years recently come into his own as a solo artist apart from the Roots with that Streams of Thought EP series and then the album in 2020. So definitely kind of unexpected, but still really cool. And I don't know, do you think this album Cheat Codes actually did it surprise you in any way? Because to me, I think it's like really good, really well done as you'd expect. Really classic boom bap production from Danger Mouse, pretty inviting samples from some of the songs. Black Thought, as you'd expect, lyrical mastermind, dexterous flows, rapidy ass rapper. People know this. But do you think Black Thought at age 50 and Danger Mouse at 45, do you think they can like really like wow you like that anymore? Or is it just like really good, but you kind of expect it to be really good?
Well, I think there's like two different thoughts that come to mind with that question. The first is no, I don't think that there's anything that like surprised me on it, but I do think I was very satisfied and maybe somewhat I guess like I wasn't expecting. I don't know if I'd say surprised, but I wasn't expecting to see the amount of collaborators on here. Black
Mm.
Thought I think pretty famously is very selective with the people he brings on and works with it. He doesn't just do verses for anybody and doesn't just bring on anybody for the projects. He's very selective. And so seeing the range of people on here made sense, and seeing some people that I've been hoping to get some music from recently or that we haven't been hearing from. I'm like, this is pretty interesting. That I think the other thing is Danger Mouse, for as dexterous as he is as a producer, and obviously someone that has produced for many genres. Probably the band I think about him with most is the Shins and James
Mm.
Mercer with their collaboration for Broken Bells. What he does for a group like or for Broken Bells or Gnarls Barkley is quite different than what he does on this, and it's just kind of nice to know that Danger Mouse can still reach back and you know uh, throw this pitch to this level still. I think like my one like I don't know, my one critique of this would be uh sometimes some of the mixing felt a little like
Mm.
strange in terms of choices. Like I'm trying to remember exactly what song it is. Strangers is one of them. But there's another song. Oh, the darkest part where with Raekwon, where it just feels like Black Thought is like not like close to the mic, and I think they're trying to like create some sort of vocal effect, but it just kind of
Mm.
makes it sound a little washed out at points. And I'm I guess I'm just like Black Thought has an incredibly strong rapping voice. Like I just want to hear him coming through crystal clear all the time, and I'm not sure if these like choices really added much. But
Mm.
that's like a small nitpick for me on a lot of this. Tell me about the because I saw you nodding your head when I was talking about the collaborators on this. What were the people popping up on this that you were most excited to hear from?
Yeah, well, I think there's some obvious candidates, and honestly, I think if Danger Mouse made an album with some of these other artists, that's probably an even more inviting proposition than, say, working with Black Thought in his 30th year in the game.
Hmm.
Joey Badass, ASAP Rocky, especially. I think both of them would be very intriguing, very tantalizing with this kind of vision on the producing side of things. Um, Run the Jewels, hearing LP and
Yeah.
Killer Mike with Danger Mouse. Yeah, shocking. Sounds great. Um, in terms of my favorite song with Guess, I actually think my favorite song on Guess is The Darkest Part, just
Hmm.
because that Kid Sister chorus I think is incredibly catchy. You got Raekwon the chef doing what he does, Danger Mouse bringing you these keys on the beat. I really like that one a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think it was great to hear a lot of these guests. And I'm not a Russ guy at all, but I thought he actually sounded pretty good on Because as well.
Yeah, I think when Raekwon comes in on the darkest part, even though he also is a little bit drowned out with the rest of the Sonics on it, I think it just kind of levels the song up. Raekwon has a tendency to do that. Just, any song he's on, just the song automatically feels like it's better. I really liked Belize, with the Doom feature on that, but
Yeah.
kind of calling back to some of Danger Mouse's collaborations with Doom back in the day,
Danger
and
Doom.
really just thought that song was really fun. Strangers, you mentioned that one with Run the Jewels and ASAP Rocky, but that's probably my favorite track off of this. I really just think that's like the catchiest, but also just like sounds so badass. Like the way that the beat is like toned down on that. But the song that maybe surprised me most, or the collaborator I was most surprised to see, was Michael Kiwanuka,
Hmm.
um, who I mean, I know very little about Michael Kiwanuka, to be completely honest, other than I'm pretty sure he's the guy that sings for Big Little Lies, right? Isn't he the guy that sings the intro to that?
Oh shit, that's right. Nice pull there.
So to
Yes.
see him pop up on this album, I was like, huh, this is not someone I would have expected to see on this album with these two people, but I think his vocals really add this like dreary kind of like gloomy like feeling to the song, which is really just like inviting with this like almost like grinding city type feel to that beat. So I thought this was a really fun album, and maybe it's not surprising, maybe it's not going to blow you away, but for as many albums we listen to where we're like polling for anything good to talk about, I feel like all I have to say is good things about this. So I was pretty pleased for sure.
For sure.
Why don't we switch gears though and move on to H? Dave, when was the last time we talked about H? Because we definitely have.
Yeah, we talked about him twice this year. We talked about him with his feature, War, on the Artie debut mixtape, Peer Pressure, his compatriot across the pond in UK hip hop, white rappers at that in UK hip hop. And then we also mentioned him as a candidate for XXL Freshman 2022, would have been the second British rapper to be selected had he been picked. However, he was not picked. And while I think H is still rising in popularity in the United States, his accomplishments in the UK are quite long already for someone who's only 22, has only been rapping in a mainstream way for a few years. I believe he has 7 top 10s in the UK, 5 platinum songs. This is his debut album, though, Close to Home. I think a lot of expectations were put on this for MH, for an artist who has been popular but is still young, still perhaps finding what that career is going to sound like as someone who kind of not dissimilar to Artie came up in as like in viewed as like kind of, oh, there's that cheeky white guy rapping, he's pretty good though. And while I don't know if H is quite as funny as Artie is, like Artie just says some ridiculous shit, H is a bit more seasoned. And I think there was a nice bit of range on this, more than I had heard on his past EPs. I think most famously people would know him from his song Rain with AJ Tracy, which is just an awesome banger. And of course, Agent AJ did link again on this new album. But what did you think? H's debut album, close to home.
So, War, I really loved that song from Artie's album. I thought that was a really strong feature. And the album starts off in a very similar type of vein. Belgrave Road 1, Louis Vuitton, and 1989 are straight, like that grime, like London rap feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then the album kind of starts to change a little bit. And, you get Baby featuring Ashanti on
Right.
there. A few songs
Ashanti
later,
sample, really, not
yeah,
not really a
Ashanti
feature.
Champ. Yes, thank you for the clarification because that is important. Shanti isn't showing out for Aitch quite yet. Um, in Disguise with Bakar, I think is like a real
Mm,
like delineation point in this album because then it starts to get a lot more like poppy and a lot more like upbeat and a little bit more away from what I was expecting. And what group came to mind was Gym Class Heroes for me and Travie McCoy
oh my
with a lot of this
gosh.
stuff. If you listen to In Disguise, that could have been a Gym Class Hero song. And I'm like, I mean, say what you want about Gym Class Heroes, they were huge for a period of time back in the
Yeah,
2000s.
Cupid's chokehold.
Travie McCoy was everywhere, and I think H has some of that in him. Now I think he's a much more talented actual rapper. Like what
Mm.
like those first three songs, Belgrave Road 1, Louis Vuitton 1989 are straight bangers. Awesome way to open the album. I think it starts to peter out a little bit from there. But I like when he does that more. But he does it okay even with people like AJ Tracy and Ed Sheeran later on. Like I think he
Mm.
those songs aren't horrible. So there's some potential for some maybe broader appeal than just that grime rap. But did you get the same feeling?
Yeah, I guess I can hear what you mean. I think the thing there's two things about that, right? H is not as funny as Artie,
Mm.
and he's not as hard as AJ Tracy. He's a bit almost non-threatening at times. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of how he's come across the whole time. He doesn't run away from that either. And when he does his brand of a trap song on like Check on this one, it comes across to me as like super authentic because he doesn't actually run away from who he is and who he isn't. Like I still think like it's fun to hear his spin on like those party joints, if that makes sense. The other thing too is because he's from Manchester, he's not from London. He has a different accent. He sounds different
Mhm.
than other English rappers, at least the mainstream ones that we know, because most of them are not from the north. And something about him, I think he just has a bit of a unique presence. And yeah, I think that's funny to. I'd be curious if anyone has really made that connection before, the Travie McCoy across the pond UK rap, like cadence and style. That's interesting. Um, I think if you listen to a song like My G featuring Ed Sheeran, obviously huge feature to pull Ed Sheeran on your debut album, but if you go a bit
I
more
mean,
under the hood with that one, it's actually like a love letter to his younger sister who has Down syndrome, and it's a message song. And
yeah.
and then it's like, oh yeah, actually it makes perfect sense that you'd have Ed Sheeran singing the hook for this one. It's like it all
Mhm.
kind of fits. So it's cool to hear, I think, a really heartfelt, intentional song like My G alongside just something fun like Check or something like Our Kid with AJ Tracy, where he's literally going bar for bar back and forth with his contemporary rapper. So, well, I don't think he's a refined product yet. He's clearly made a bunch of good songs at this point. Of course, Rain is certified at this point. He's made enough of these songs to be like, yeah, the momentum is definitely going forward. He's definitely rapidly rising talent.
Yeah, the Ed Sheeran point where great to get him doing the feature, but he's also been doing a lot of features recently on up and coming
Mm,
albums. Talk about Fireboy just a few weeks back and him hopping on those tracks. So
yeah.
he's working. He's willing to hop on and
He's
catch
also a
fire
fan
with
of
some of these.
UK rap,
Yeah,
truthfully, as a British man himself. So
and he
perhaps
definitely
not that.
wishes he was a rapper for sure, or at least better
Yeah.
at it than he is. Um, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the songs that you shouted out, and yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to like on here. I'm very interested to see if he chooses to like refine more in certain lanes, or if he's going to try to stay like broad in terms of appeal. Because like you mentioned, like the AJ Tracy and my G Ed Sheeran song are very different. Those first few songs compared to
Mhm.
songs like Sunshine and In Disguise are very different. So he's got a lot of different sounds he's trying here, and I think he does them all fairly well. Some better than others, obviously.
Yeah, I think the key thing with him too is he has to determine, eventually has to determine what kind of artist he wants to be if he's going to target uh, mainstream rap success in the US without alienating his fans in the UK, and whether that is even a real thing to decide. And that's not just a strawman argument, because we've seen Stormzy and Skepta and Heady One and on smaller degrees, people like AJ, find success in the US and still be legends in the UK. Now, is H and RD probably as well? Are they the next up on that regard? It'd be interesting to see how a UK white rapper, would cross over to the US, given how white rappers are received both positively and negatively just in the space of hip hop. Like how does H fit in the Jack Harlow moment we're living in? Tough to
Mm.
say, and we're probably a few years away from finding that out. But yeah, I'm definitely rooting for him. He seems like a really nice guy as well. Seems pretty funny and down to earth. So, um, was happy that close to home went as well as it did because made do on a lot of that hype and talent.
Yeah, I think Close to Home is worth listening to, if nothing else, than to be tuning into someone that seems like they're going to be making a name for themselves even more moving forward. So give it a listen. Let's talk about someone that's already established themselves, though, and that's Demi Lovato, who just released her newest album, Holy Fvck or Holy Fuck. Yeah, why didn't you just go with the U? I don't know.
Marketing,
Stylistic, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
SEO.
Anyways, yeah, Demi went punk rock
Yeah.
metal with
Back
this.
to her roots, baby. Camp Rock. We've come full circle. Album
Yeah,
8.
I suppose so, right? I guess she's a lot more known for her pop R&B ish vibe than
Correct.
what we got on this, and she's been working in between, I think dealing with some personal matters. She mentions
Hmm.
right at the top of this album that she's you know been back in rehab for some time between the last album, and as nice as it is to have her back making music, it does feel like she's someone that is very aware that her mental health struggles and her substance abuse struggles are things she's going to be dealing with for the rest of her life. And I
Right.
imagine that in some way making music and the cycles and the nature of stardom probably are detrimental in some way to her dealing with those things. So I imagine it's probably a difficult balance for her.
Hmm.
How did you feel? How did you feel about this like turn in terms of her musical sound and just kind of persona in general on Holy Fuck?
Right, and I think that is the key question, the most interesting thing about this eighth Demi Lovato record, because we just got the seventh one a year and a few months ago in 2021, Dancing with the Devil, The Art of Starting Over. And that was not a rock album by any stretch. That was the comeback album. That was the rebirth album, the hopefully step forward in her personal life record, right? And then Skin of My Teeth comes out as the lead single. And I mean, the song starts off, Demi went to rehab again, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact that she's kind of making light of it or fitting it into her songs, like, wow, actually, I think the way she speaks about this in the music on that, as well as other songs later in the track list, like Happy Ending, I actually kind of appreciate that candor, as you said, that self awareness, that whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's one of the most interesting things about her as an artist is the struggle, unfortunately, and she's at least factoring that into how she talks about life. But her going back to rock, obviously back in the day, it was much more pop rock um, sound, in the coming off Disney Channel, of course. And I believe the Jonas Brothers were super involved in the inception of that sound and writing of a lot of that music back then. But to go back to rock, I actually think for her comes across pretty genuine, given
Mhm.
that she has roots in this, and obviously I think people know how in vogue this has become in mainstream pop music in the wake of Olivia Rodrigo and Machine Gun Kelly and even like a Willow Smith. You know, like we're seeing
Yeah.
this pretty regularly. Where like in the Travis Barkerization of pop has begun in many ways, and Demi doing it is like that's one of the best candidates I think for someone to do this, where it actually makes sense for you strategically in the pop landscape, but it also comes across as more or less a bit authentic. So I welcomed it because I think it actually sounds pretty good because her core strength is still present, which is her really good vocals. She has an amazing voice, and it fits. And yeah, I think she can handle it. So I think this music is a bit more lively and interesting than a lot of the stuff on the last record, which is kind of obviously more somber and introspective and inward looking. I think the stuff on Holy Fuck is probably a bit more fun to run back.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the vocals. I think that's the thing is uh, Demi is such a strong singer and can do so many different things with her voice. I mean, even on this album, you get her giving so many different vocal performances and presenting her voice in different ways to try to create effects that at times it can feel like there's more than just her on songs.
Mm.
And obviously she has a few collaborators throughout this, but um, she could make anything sound good. I think with the way that she can sing. So then it's like, is the vision there? Is what she's trying to say with these songs at least entertaining? At most, deep and thoughtful. And I think it probably falls somewhere in the middle. It's definitely entertaining and definitely fun to run back. It feels like sometimes it's like some things are thrown in or like edgy just to kind of make an edgy album. I don't hate it. I just think it doesn't always feel as like totally genuine as some of her stuff on her last album, which was obviously incredibly personal, and she opened up about almost dying because of her
Mm.
substance use.
Yeah,
So
you can't always have that in your back pocket.
exactly. And if you think about it, I think there's a point where after you've been in this cycle long enough that you do grow an edge. So it feels definitely like this is a move that makes sense for her and feels in line with her interests. Just um, I think that at moments it felt better for me in this album than others. And one of those moments is Skin in My Teeth. I think that song is really great. I actually really like the first one with Youngblood Freak,
Yeah.
which I was surprised at, especially, Youngblood, also a Disney alum. So I was like, oh, this is kind of cool to see them teaming up together. But what other songs stood out to you?
I definitely agree about Freak with Youngblood, and Youngblood's got an album coming out next month we'll be talking about. Youngblood brings a nice contrast with his vocals to that song, and you know his introduction to rock music. We don't have to get into that, but perhaps the authenticity is a bit more questionable with him, but it sounded pretty good. So hats off to them with that one. Um, I was struck by Substance and City of Angels because those two in particular I think are specifically pop punk tracks. The
Mhm.
drums on City of Angels really stood out to me. But just Demi's performance on that. I think those are two of the, perhaps more, I don't know, perhaps more traditional, like backward looking tracks. Like that's more like an Avril Lavigne song
Mhm.
by Demi, something like that. Skin My Teeth is definitely the catchiest thing uh, on here. And I think, if anything, my biggest criticism would just be I think the lyrics themselves, songwriting itself, can be a bit basic at times. Like it's just kind of straightforward writing, which is okay. You're making pop music still, even though it's rock at the end of the day, whatever. But, I guess this one, I'm not really looking for like too much deeper meaning. I think, if anything, I'm just taking in the fact that she's just letting loose and saying, fuck it. This is how my life is, Let me at least enjoy myself as best as I can while still trying to manage what I got going on. That's at least how I read it.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation for City of Angels, and for substance. I definitely see what you're saying with those two songs and the sound. Feed is like a little bit more of a traditional like Demi song in a way. You could probably found that on other albums, but I didn't hate that. As like a switch up near the end. The title track, Holy Fuck. There's moments on that track where I'm like, she's just like screaming fuck just to scream it, in the background. But then there's
Yeah.
other points where like the chorus was kind of got me. She's like, I'll show you the light with the lights off. And I was like, huh, you know what? That's kind of hot. Like, good for you, Demi. You're going for it. You're trying to be a little sex pie. Don't blame you. 29, I really liked her vocal performance, and the guitar on that almost gave me like a little like Chris Cornell vibe. Like Black Hole Sun type distortion at the beginning. Thought that was pretty cool. And then oh man, there's one other one. Is it um man, I'm blanking on it at the moment, but there's one that starts off with some drums in the beginning that sound very like I don't know, Green Day-ish almost, kind of like this like whirring, but like almost like jazzy type sound. If I can think of it before the end of before we move on, I'll mention again. But definitely liked how she was pulling from so many different influences on this, and I think obviously like Skin in My Teeth reminds me a lot of like Garbage in ways. So you can tell that she had a lot of like songs from her childhood that she wanted to infuse into this. I think she did a pretty good job, and she's at least trying something, which we always give people credit for here, because she could have very easily just made a plain old Demi record and we'd be like, same old Demi, still a great singer, love it. Instead, there's a lot more to dig into here, so
Yeah.
I'd recommend listening to it for sure.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if she had found like a more visionary producing group. Like, I'm not expecting her to make the Halsey album with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, but what is like the Demi Lovato version of that? Is it
Mm.
just Holy Fuck, or is there something more? Who can say?
Yeah, I'm trying to think who would be like a good producer for her. I would almost like to see her like work with Dave Grohl or something like that,
Oh, that'd be
especially
cool.
Grohl having lost someone to substance abuse recently, and Taylor Hawkins,
Yeah,
and obviously Cobain. I think they could maybe pull a lot out of each other, but who knows?
it's a good one.
Anyways, drop your thoughts on the Demi Lovato album below. Also, go follow our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify. We're going to switch up from music to TV, where season one of the Rehearsal with Nathan Fielder wrapped up this past Friday. Quick 6 episode season. Dave, did you get to check this out at all?
I did not. I saw a lot of the discourse about Nathan Fielder's docu-comedy HBO follow-up to Nathan for You, but I did not check it out. I think at the end of the day, it just the cringe, not the cringe stuff. I think it's just the fact that it's like the docu vibe to it all. The fact that it's not scripted is just
Mhm.
kind of the barrier to entry for me. Not usually something I'm into, but I have appreciated seeing a lot of the reactions people have had. It's clearly a singular work from Nathan Fielder, something definitely significant that came out this summer. That much is clear.
Yeah, he as a creator and as a visionary is so singular. He definitely brings that cringy vibe like you talked about. I think awkward might just be the word that kind of best describes him, and he leans into that so hard that I definitely understand that his work is not for everybody. The Rehearsal is a show that I really enjoyed for the most part, but definitely left me with a lot of thoughts and a lot of like confusing feelings about the show. I think there were moments, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of the memes about things online. I mean, the him with the laptop desk around his shoulders and like dropping into different scenes has become a bit of a on like a running joke online. But um, there are moments in this show that were probably some of the funniest moments of television that I've watched all year. And then, there were moments where I was really left confused and uncertain about if what we were watching was really like ethical or well thought out. It's hard too because, it's a docu comedy, but we don't actually know how much of this is scripted versus unscripted. We don't know how much of this is actually what really like came out of this experiment, taking these people in these situations where they wanted to attempt something before they actually did it, and to see if how it could go. And he runs them through all these rehearsals to make sure it goes perfectly for them. Obviously it never actually goes perfectly, which is I think kind of the point of this. But um it how much of that is actually what was intended versus what he wanted us to see. So it's really interesting, and I think the final episode has been something to talk about. One of the running arcs of the season is this woman named Angela, a very religious woman who wants to see what it's like to be a mom before she's actually a mother. And so Nathan puts her in this dream house and has these child actors who are swapped in and out every couple of hours during the day. They try to find her a partner. The partner that she finds through dating is this guy who's really into numerology. He comes across as very strange and off-putting, and has become kind of a joke online. But um, throughout the season, Nathan finds himself more and more involved in her arc to be her partner in this, and actually ends up where she leaves, but he's still going through with the rehearsal as like the father to these child actors now in this scenario. And one of the child actors gets attached to him and is very upset when he's not going to be able to come back as the rehearsal is ending, and is confused about like who Nathan is in his life. His own father is not really involved, so he's kind of seeing Nathan as this other father figure. And it really just leaves you kind of wondering, like, man, what was this really thought out? Was this really done ethically in a way that where the psychology and the mental health impacts that this can have on the people involved, was it really something that was considered fully? Did the experiment of the show actually just take the show in unintended directions that they couldn't have planned for? It's pretty thought provoking. They did renew it for season two. They announced that just a few hours before the finale aired. So I'm definitely interested to see how the discourse around the show will impact how things go in season two. I mean, Nathan Fielder is pretty open about taking things that are happening on the internet around his content and working that into his content. So I think we'll definitely be hearing from him about it in some way. But I think it's hard because, like I said, there are some moments that are just laugh out loud funny on this show. The first episode I would say is probably an all timer. There's a couple of other just like absolutely gold moments where Nathan attends a class that he actually had taught. He's rehearsing to understand the perspective of someone that's in the class, and so he's then talking to an actor playing him, who's then responding to him in certain ways. Really like a mind fuck episode, and you get really down the rabbit hole there. I would recommend it to anyone that enjoyed Nathan for You, or wants to kind of have a challenging but also really rewarding watch. But definitely not where I expected the show to end up. So I would say I'm like pleased, but not as thrilled about the show as I once was. When we were about halfway through the season, I was like, this might be a top 10 show for me for this year. Probably not going to land there now. So, uh, bit of a disappointment, but also a lot to like. Why don't we switch gears though to a show that I was really pleased with, Only Murders in the Building season 2, which actually just wrapped up today. Dave, give me just your like general overall thoughts about Only Murders in the Building season 2.
Yeah, I think the Hulu comedy is perfectly fun, perfectly pleasant, nice to be with these actors, particularly Steve Martin and Martin Short. Um, I think the plot can be a bit meandering, and there's really a ton of characters on the show, so you kind of have to just roll with your main trio here. But it's perfectly fun, perfectly nice. I don't think it's like the funniest comedy I watch, far from it, but I think Only Murders knows what it is at this point,
Mhm.
and by the way season 2 ended with the finale, perhaps is branching out a little bit more, now having a murder happen outside the Arconia's walls.
Mhm.
So I probably like it a little bit more than I did after season 1, where I thought it was a bit unremarkable ultimately. So the talent is probably what keeps you coming back more than anything else.
Yeah, I think for me, what I enjoyed season two a lot more than season one. I think what I really liked about season two was even though it had a lot of characters that were struggling, at times felt a bit meandering, like you said. I think the ability to take these characters who at times I just really didn't enjoy being with in season one. I mean, like we talked about how Martin Short, his performance can be not for everybody, and especially in season one, he's just totally playing his character to like the ninth and 10th level all the time. And uh you know I talked about Selena Gomez being someone that I wasn't super impressed with as a actor in season one. I definitely think her performance in season two was a little better. And Steve Martin, I actually grew liked a lot more by the end of season two, and I think it's because the show allowed them as characters to develop beyond just being the old folks with teamed up with the young folk and trying to like make sense of what a podcast is. Like the jokes that were pretty ham-fisted in the first season felt more put to the side, and you got an opportunity to explore the idea of fatherhood and aging and um relationships and the trauma and how that informs relationships. And I think season two was just a lot more layered, and had a lot more depth in terms of theme than season one, and I really ended up enjoying the ride of season two a lot more. Were there any storylines outside of the main murder, who done it, that you really found yourself enjoying?
Well, I think that's kind of the issue with a lot of those other storylines is they really get picked up and dropped
Hmm.
quite quickly. If you think about the beginning of the show, the central murder kind of becomes second in importance to other stuff going on later, right? Even though you get the what's her name, Bonnie, Bugsy, the
Bunny.
Bunny, Jesus, you get the Bunny episode, which I think is
That's a good one.
nice. But after that, it's kind of like she's like gone from the show. You know, they introduced that the waiter at that diner, he's gone. The whole stuff with the building manager, the new one coming in, is she a suspect? She's pregnant. Oh, next thing you know, she's just not on the show for the next four episodes in a row. It's
Hmm.
the stuff with the hardcore fans. They come in and out. I think that even the other people in the building that are getting fleshed out slowly but surely. I don't think any of those like side plots really have much heft to them because we just kind of move through them, and a lot of them we don't even resolve. So it's really just about how everyone's in the orbit of Charles, Oliver, and Mabel. I think that's kind of the narrative heft is with them, and kind of not really with anyone else. Like even like Cara Delevingne, she has this whole art thing going on, right? But like that again, it's like it's barely in. There's not a lot of momentum with those other side plots, I guess. And then even there's stuff from season one, like Mabel's friend slash boyfriend, who's like
Hmm.
I think gets two lines of acknowledgement on this season and is not on the show at all. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's sure, for me. I think like plot wise, it's definitely up and down. But you know, I think I actually I did enjoy like when Tina Fey came in more more consistently towards the end when she becomes a suspect and the
Hmm.
all is not okay in Oklahoma stuff comes up. Even Michael Rappaport, I thought was pretty effective as the cop with some questionable motives. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, the thing, the three characters, our trio is like the crux of the show, and without them, I don't think this really works at all.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely doesn't work without those three. I agree. I usually don't like Rappaport. I actually didn't mind his episode, the one where they're, I think it's like second to last episode where they're following him around, and kind of getting more of a background there. But yeah, I mean, you're completely right. Like Amy Schumer is like a fairly big part of the beginning of the season and then gets completely put to the side. But I think all of those characters kind of work as people that are like viewed as suspects until they're ruled out type of thing, which is not like unheard of for whodunits, but definitely means that the show can feel a bit choppier and like there's a lot of like starts and stops. I think for me the storylines that I found myself most interested in, I really liked the episode where Mabel and Teddy got a chance to spend the time together and go to was it Staten Island or was it Coney Island? I can't remember. Um,
Yeah, Coney.
yeah, they go to Coney Island, and I thought that episode was really nice. And then exploring just kind of like the idea of like fathers and sons. Steve Martin as someone that didn't have a child. You know how he had uh, become a father figure to I forgot what her name was, the young girl in the
Right, I
season.
know. Because she goes
Um,
away and you forget.
yeah, she pops in and out as well. Um, Lucy, is the character's name. Um, yeah, so I really enjoyed that, and then obviously the paternity stuff with Martin Sheen's Oliver and his son. Kind of what it actually means to be a father and like how you define that. I mean, it's not anything like groundbreaking or new, but that stuff always like works on me. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing, I think.
Yeah. I enjoyed seeing Brazos, the comeback of Brazos. I want my soup.
Yeah. Oh my god, that was so funny. Yeah, that and in the last episode when they're trying to like uh throw Cinda Canning off of her game and they start like moving in slow motion.
Yeah, the slow
That
motion was
really
actually
got
pretty
me.
funny.
That was hilarious. I was like, this is gonna be so stupid, and they really pulled it off. Thought that was great.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you believe that he got stabbed? Because
you know, I was like 50-50 because on the one hand it was so unceremonious. Then they cuts back from Hulu commercial and he has just a sheet over him. At that point, I'm like, oh, he's not dead. There's no way they would kill him off that unceremoniously. But I
right,
was like, I could see Steve Martin not wanting to like be on this show forever. I mean, he's working, but like not like doing a ton of
right.
stuff.
Yeah. At the other hand, though, I don't think you can make this show without this trio. They're all executive
Hmm.
producers of this show. This is Steve Martin's first show he's been creatively involved in like over 10 years. So I don't think any of them will ever die. The show will just end,
Yeah,
personally. But in the moment, I was like, oh, this is really convincing. Did he get stabbed? That's crazy. Wow.
he's a good actor.
Exactly.
Brazos.
Shout out Brazos. I think it's a better Selena season for sure.
Yes.
I've liked Selena Gomez acting in other stuff, but the Mabel character, I haven't been a huge fan of that characterization. Just I think it's just the character's personality. She's just a bit quirky for me. Almost kind of reins in the charisma that Selena has shown in other roles. But
Hmm.
I think particularly her stuff with Rappaport, where she's kind of like verbally boxing with him while actually sparring with him in the ring. That kind of brought out a different side, I think. And yeah, I think in general they're kind of finding a rhythm with these characters and with this show. And like Oliver, like I think Martin Short like really knows like what's going on with Oliver at this point. Just these ridiculous lines, these ridiculous mannerisms, because he's just a ridiculous character, and you just kind of have to roll with that, right? Like I think in the
Hmm.
first season they kind of annoyed me with stuff like trying to play sympathy for Oliver's like finances, even though he lives in this like luxurious apartment beyond his means. But like now they just forget about all that shit. You know,
Hmm.
we're just gonna be with these people and watch them somehow be involved in another murder. You know, cool.
Well, I wonder if you're supposed to also like when it comes to Oliver's finances, like believe the podcast success is
Yeah,
somewhat like buoying him. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, there is that like there are moments where he's like, "Oh yeah, I owe you a lot of money, don't I?" And it's just kind of like mentioned, but they don't like really like sit on it a lot, which I agree was nice. I am looking forward to season 3. They set it up with Paul Rudd playing the person who's killed Ben
yes.
Glenroy. Um, it,
Naturally, we'll have a flashback episode.
100%. I'm actually pretty interested because I think some of the setup, the things said between Paul Rudd and Steve Martin before the show goes on there was all really interesting. So I'm definitely bought in at this point, and it's a show that a few people that I don't get to connect with about shows a lot in my life really enjoyed, like my parents, some coworkers. So it feels like a easy, non-confrontational show that you can really recommend and connect with people around. So I enjoy that about it as well.
Yeah, I mean it's already the biggest Hulu comedy and one of their biggest shows. Period.
Mhm.
There's a lot of Emmy attention for that first season that we'll find out about soon. Um, watching it, or was that last episode? I forget. But yeah, it
I
sounds
don't
like
remember.
this is a show that everyone's pretty invested with Hulu and our three leads. So I imagine season 3 probably comes out next year. They seem to be whipping this one up quick because it was a very brief wait from season 1 to season 2.
We'll be talking about it whenever it comes out. But Dave, we're going from shows that wrapped up to new shows now. She-Hulk on Disney Plus. Um, yeah, I mean, why don't we just start off? Were you looking forward to She-Hulk?
Um, that's a great question. I think in a vacuum I was, because I think it introduces a once again tantalizing presence of Marvel doing something new. Marvel legal comedy? Low stakes Marvel show? Low stakes Marvel anything? Sign me up for that. Sounds great. Tatiana Maslany. I like her a lot. She was great on Perry Mason. Emmy winner for Orphan Black. Sounds like good casting. Marvel usually does great with casting. Not surprising. Yeah, that all sounds good. Now, whether the show is actually going to be those things I was promised it was going to be, I have no fucking clue. Because in the beginning, you have this huge sequence with Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo back as the OG Hulk, Smart Hulk, he calls himself now. Is that what the show's going to be, or are we going to settle in to that like workplace legal comedy? I don't know yet. We've only seen the first episode. We know there's going to be other MCU cameos of various stature coming in with Wong and Abomination, Tim Roth coming back from '08 Incredible Hulk, and also Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, Daredevil, coming back. Makes sense. He's also a lawyer. So, how much will it really get to be itself versus servicing all these other MCU threads? I don't know. But the idea of it, I like. But I also like the idea of Moon Knight, and I didn't like Moon Knight by the end of it.
Um, yeah, I think I wouldn't say I was necessarily like looking forward to it. I feel like when it comes to the shows at this point, I don't find myself getting super hyped. I think that's one because of the varying levels of success that the shows have had, and I think just quality of the shows, but also I think unless they're really doing something weird and intriguing, I don't find myself super bought in, and I don't know if I feel totally convinced that they're going to fully commit to the legal comedy show here.
Yeah,
And the first episode only further like it solidifies those fears for me because we got a pretty straightforward origin story. We It's a little bit more tongue in cheek with a lot of fourth wall breaking.
right.
Jennifer Walters, speaks directly to the camera, talking, making jokes that are very meta jokes. Is Steve Rogers a virgin? Like the internet meme,
Yes,
discourse, which is funny, but it just kind of leaves me like, I get that they're trying to be a little more edgy, a little bit funnier, but I don't know if I
right.
fully trust Marvel to really lean into what they say they're going to do.
To their credit, that is coming from the comics. The She-Hulk comic talks to the reader and actually did that before Deadpool ever did. That being said, you're right. We need to see Marvel Studios do this correctly, do this well, convincingly, whatever, before I get invested in it working. And I also need to see one of these MCU shows that doesn't clearly just feel like set up and stat padding for an eventually more significant role and performance in a movie to come out at a later date.
Hmm.
Does that not
Completely agree.
describe every single one of the Marvel shows to this point? At least some of them had other qualities, like Loki and WandaVision, but the rest more or less just felt like a setup, right? Setting up Kate Bishop, setting up Moon Knight, setting up Miss Marvel, setting up She Hulk. Here we are once again. So I think Tatiana Maslany is a nice choice. She's a talented actor. You want to
Yeah.
hire talented actors for your franchises. We know that. And I'm sure whatever future movie thing she is in will be intriguing. Also important to note that the film rights for the Hulk, Incredible Hulk, have been complicated this entire run of Marvel because Universal actually is in the mix for distributing that. That's why we've never got another Hulk movie after '08. That's why the Planet Hulk storyline was more or less serviced via Thor Ragnarok, right? So
Mhm.
She-Hulk is kind of like Marvel's out to doing the Hulk. We assume Banner and Ruffalo are at the end of their rope as an OG person in the MCU. So She-Hulk's like a new path forward, new, and honestly probably a more interesting version, right? Definitely a more quite popular comic character, but that fourth wall breaking, the more humorous aspect to it. So I am cautiously optimistic, but again, you really have no way of knowing where the show's gonna go after the first episode, and we've, as you said, we've seen a few of these at this point to know that it's hard to get your hopes up. I think for the narrative, you know, stakes being too high, and that's not necessarily the creator's fault. It feels more like a management problem.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot made of the VFX with this, especially with the trailer. I don't know about you, but I didn't really mind it all that much. I think going in, I'm kind of assuming like, yeah, probably the She-Hulk CGI will be a little bit rougher than the Hulk CGI because they've had the Hulk CGI for a while. They kind of have those models and stuff, right? This is from scratch, so yep, it'll probably get better over time. But I don't know. I wasn't distracted by it at all. I actually thought the Hulk fight, was actually pretty solid for TV standards.
Yeah, especially hearing the criticisms of the VFX going in, I was kind of looking for it, and I didn't see anything that felt egregious. Nothing like the Aquaman sand, which will forever be my lowest bar. So if it doesn't come close to that, I'm pretty satisfied. Um, I I thought the VFX was okay, and I actually, for as much as I'm bagging on it, I really enjoyed certain moments of this. I thought Tatiana and Mark Ruffalo really had good chemistry and played off each other really well. And obviously, they spent a lot of time together, so I thought that was a fun way to kind of introduce the character and give her, immediate credibility with Ruffalo playing right across from her. I really thought um the her discovering her powers but not having the same issues that Bruce Banner has was
Yes.
really funny, the way that they kind of talked
Hmm.
about it all, and also like r- really smart commentary on the issues that most women face in the world.
Yes.
Probably could
Oh
say
yeah.
all women face in the world, and how that's kind of almost like prepared her to be a better Hulk right from the get-go.
Right. Oh,
um
I have to watch my anger and keep it in. Oh wow, never done that before. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Literally, oh, I have to worry about being scared. Being a woman in the world is scary. Like, I thought that was all really smart and well done. Um, and yeah, then I also like really liked how she does get a little bit of a courtroom moment near the end. Obviously leads to Titania showing up, Jamila Jamil, who
Hmm.
I'm excited. I really haven't seen her doing much since The Good Place, so
Yeah, that's right.
I loved her on that. I obviously really like her husband and the music he makes, so maybe we'll get a little James Blake in this. Who knows?
That's right.
But man, I think overall, like, I'm like cautiously optimistic. Would love it if they really lean into the courtroom drama of it all. I just, again, I need to see Marvel do it before I think I trust them fully.
Totally. Also, Renee Elise Goldsberry is also on the show. I'm not exactly sure what she's up to, but once again, they have the talent for the show. We, like you said, we got to see it.
Gotta see it. Put your money where your mouth is. Let's move from Disney Plus though to Westeros.
I've seen
We're
it.
back, baby. Man, Dave, House of the Dragon, season 1, episode 1, series premiere in the books. I, I'm wondering for you, we've talked about our Game of Thrones thoughts. You can go back and check out all of our breakdowns for that and our general thoughts on the show. Um, were you itching to get back to Westeros?
Yes, I was. Game of Thrones is my number one show of the 2010s, despite the way it ended. And I'm just a huge fan of this incredibly rich and detailed world that George R. R. Martin has created. And being back sounds great. We've known about many of these spin offs in various stages of development for some time, doing the Dance of the Dragons, doing the Targaryen Civil War is an amazingly smart choice for that first trip back to Westeros after Game of Thrones. It is, in one hand, a safe choice, a familiar choice, but also will give you, I think, everything people want. from Game of Thrones storytelling, the palace intrigue. Now with the budgets of the later seasons of Game of Thrones, it sounds great to me. So I was very excited for this, especially once I saw that first trailer, and I was like, "Yep, this looks exactly the way I want it to." You know, I'm just in the bag for this. I really can't wait to keep going.
Yeah, I think the discourse around the ending of Game of Thrones on social media, especially, had kind of left me being like, yeah, I don't know if I'm like if I need Game of Thrones back, but I definitely was incredibly intrigued. All the trailers looked fantastic. I think the idea of being with the dragons again, being in this world of political maneuvering, of action, violence, in some very violent ways in this first episode was intriguing, and I was cautiously optimistic for this. I think I felt like no matter what we got in this first episode, I was gonna be like excited, but I think my expectations were blown away because I thought this premiere was really strong. And not only did it kind of rekindle those same Thrones feelings that I had, but it just made me so excited to be with these characters who we only got to be with for 60 minutes. And to be able to set up these characters to the level and depth that they did to kind of set up the brewing conflict at the center of all this, the way that they did in this episode, obviously with some changes from the book to I think probably push certain characters together and certain actors together. Um, I just was super impressed. I thought they did a great job, and when you have Miguel Sapochnik at the
Mm.
helm, someone who knows exactly what he's doing within this world, I think that probably could have been expected. But really, shout out to him because I thought this was really well done. Were you impressed with the first episode to the same level I was?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that's right. Having Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik be your co-showrunners of this, you have people that really love this world and really care
Mhm.
about this. You know, Benioff
And
and
understand
Weiss
it.
clearly were burned out by the end, and unfortunately, that did affect the way the series ended. That is not the case with who we got here, and of course, people know Sapochnik has directed some of the biggest and most acclaimed set piece episodes of the series. Um, you know, I really liked how it started too. Just for the more casual fan, I already know this. A lot of people already know this, but not everyone knows when this show is taking place. What's going on here? They very explicitly tell you that we're about 200 years before Robert's Rebellion. We're a long way before anything we've seen in Game of Thrones with Daenerys and Jon and Ned and everyone else. So even though this is a prequel, it takes place in the past. Every single person you see on the show will live their full life and then die before anything you've seen before. So it doesn't have, I think, that like kind of like narrative uh, fault that some prequels can have when you know what's going to happen or you know people have plot armor. To someone who hasn't read Fire and Blood, hasn't read the George R. R. Martin world book, and you can figure out what happened if you want, but if you haven't read that, haven't read the wiki, you have no idea what's going on. It's completely compelling narrative, start to finish, that also George has completely laid out already. We know he knows how the story ends because he already wrote it all. So, um, like I said, I think it's a really slam dunk first premise to adapt, and that first episode I think does a really good job of hitting home why all of that makes sense. Some familiarity, right, when they mix in the old Game of Thrones theme early on, when the princess is up in the air on the dragon, the palace intrigue that we love from early Game of Thrones right there right away when we see like Viserys with his small council, and you start seeing the seeds get developed, and they very quickly establish Matt Smith's Daemon Targaryen,
Mm.
the prince of the city, the brother of the king. They establish him as a familiar antihero slash villain figure, a la Jamie Lannister, perhaps. You know, so God, I just think right from the get go, it's like, man, this we're back. We're back doing it again. I can't wait.
Yeah, it draws you right in from the very beginning, and some similarities to the first Game of Thrones. You have the political like discussions at the table, but also like setting up for this tournament, which is like obviously a
Yes.
great way to bring people together. And I thought the tournament was a lot of fun to watch the games actually happen, and a lot of the
Mm.
undercurrents there. It feels it feels pretty safe to say that that knight, what's his name, the Dornish one, is probably going to
Yes.
be the new internet boyfriend of the show moving forward.
Right, the new adult Robin Aaron.
Yeah, Sir Kristen Cole, played
Yep.
by Fabian Frankel, seems pretty
Yes,
prime to be that.
he bests on merit Damon at the end after Damon kind of begrudgingly wants to continue the fight on foot or however it was said, you know. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was cool to see Attorney uh, laid out. We see the whole thing. You know, there is Attorney in Game of Thrones season 1, but if I remember right, we see very little of the actual jousting.
Hmm.
And of course, there are many famous tourneys throughout Game of Thrones lore, such as the tourney in Harrenhal. So just to see
Hmm.
one, you know, um, this is probably one of the more least significant ones, right, compared to some of the more famous ones in the lore. But regardless, just seeing it and seeing it, of course, HBO knows Sapochnik. They know how to do this. Sapochnik directed this episode. It's just really visceral stuff. And then unexpectedly, but perhaps not surprisingly, they make this amazing montage between the violence of the tourney as it's getting a bit hairy. You know, elbows coming out and skulls getting crushed in the tourney. Didn't know the rules were so loose there,
Hmm.
but they intersplice that with this very traumatic and violent birth scene from the
Yeah,
queen, which
the
takes her
the
life.
the C-section,
Yep.
where King Viserys has to choose: does he save his wife's life or attempt to save the life of his newborn potential heir to the throne? And man, that was incredibly brutal. Really well done, but the level of convincing that that scene with the
Yep.
C-section was played to was like, I actually couldn't watch. I had to like hold my like hand above my eyes every time they cut
Right.
back to it. I was like, okay, close them,
Yeah, I was
make
the
it
same
better.
way. It's like it's not that I am squeamish with blood on screen, but it's more like I just don't know if I want to see you take it all the way. And thankfully,
Yeah,
they don't actually show it all the way, but they got pretty close.
they got pretty close, dude. Pretty
Game of
close.
Thrones has not gone soft on us. We know that much.
And I gotta say, it probably was the kiss of death when you have that really nice scene between King Viserys and Queen Emma, where
Yep.
she's in the bath, and they really are, I think, convincingly portray this loving relationship between them, and just like
Right.
how Viserys, who's kind of, I think, seen as like a weak king, potentially
Yeah.
someone who thrust into power before he was even ready or even ever should
Yeah.
have been.
Peaceful ruler, peaceful reign, but not like a strong leader. Not certainly as beloved as his predecessor, Jaehaerys, for sure.
And especially with his sister. Uh, was her name also Rhaenyra?
There, yeah. So
She's
it's
Rhaenys.
Rhaenys, and then his daughter is Rhaenyra. They're very similar.
Jeez. But his sister was the one that everybody felt like was the best choice to kind of bring the kingdoms together. But
Right.
patriarchy would not allow
The
that, it
queen who never
seems.
was.
Um, so I definitely thought that was great, and then that's followed up by this very I think moving funeral scene
Yeah.
where you see I think a lot of different dynamics. Obviously, you see how broken Viserys is and how just totally destroyed the daughter is, Princess Rhaenyra. But then you also see Matt Smith, who plays Prince Damon. We haven't really talked much about him yet. Consoling Rhaenyra, and their relationship and their dynamic is, I think, going to be a really interesting aspect to this first season, and to, I think, the conflict moving forward, because they seem pretty close, whereas Sirius and Damon are obviously moving apart by the end of the episode
Oh
based
yeah.
on something Damon supposedly said, never fully confirmed. Also an interesting aspect of this, and then it leads to the final like talk around the table about the heir, and Damon supposedly saying that he was the heir for the day type of thing. um
hmm
Man, I mean, just that sequence in general, I thought was so well done. What were your thoughts on it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think the the funeral scene looks awesome.
Mhm.
It almost looked like Dragonstone. I wasn't sure if they were actually at
Yeah.
Dragonstone. That would have been a big trip they took. I guess it would make sense.
Mhm.
Um, you hear the Dracarys, right? Rhaenyra lays it down, gives the
Mhm.
permission for the barbecue there. But yeah, seeing that custom, that was good. And yeah, I think all the small council stuff is awesome. In general, I love the small council scenes from Game of Thrones. I would
Yeah.
watch them forever. Just like, tell me about the pirates at the Stepstones. Tell me about the issues that the Master of Coin is worried about. I'm with it. Just tell me what's going on. But
Mhm.
seeing the open contempt that Daemon and the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower, have for each other. Otto Hightower, played by Rhys Ifans. That conflict, just seeing where it's already at, and they will be on opposite sides with the
Mhm.
conflict to follow. Very, very tantalizing. And then they do a good job of being like, you know what? Nope. Otto, he's not the clear good guy here either, because he attempts to whore out his fucking daughter to
Yep.
Viserys, right? His daughter, Alicent, who's, at court, supposed to really kind of remind you of a young Sansa, I suppose, if you
Mhm.
want to archetype it there. And Alicent will be played soon by Olivia Cook once we move a little bit further in time. Big fan of hers. Can't wait to see that. Um, yeah, I think in general, what's cool about this story as we see it unfold is that there's a lot more gray uh, on both sides with this. There's not like kind of clear defined like good guys and bad guys per se, and it's like the shift of allegiances, the politicking of it all, very Game of Thrones. But it'll be fun, I think, to watch as a viewer and decide where you're siding with things, right? Because you would think after watching one episode, you're like, oh, clearly Princess Rhaenyra is our hero, right?
Protagonist. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe that'll still be the case, but truth. You can look up what happens if you want. I would probably advise not doing that, but very appealing, and also people I like further down the cast list, right? The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard is played by Graham McTavish, who was awesome in The Hobbit. Sonoya Mizuno as Mysaria, the paramour of Daemon. Big fan of hers. Not sure
Mhm.
what's going on with her, but that'll be cool. And then you have Steve Toussaint as Corlys Valerian, the husband of the queen who never was. One of the wealthiest men in the realm on the council right now. What is he up to? Is he gonna? What is his side?
Mhm.
Um, all the setup is just so appealing, right? And I just can't wait to see shit pop off. I think it's probably obvious to many that Viserys is not long for this show because his succession is the whole crux of the conflict to come. Literally, this is a guy who got by the crown, by the throne. He literally cut himself on the throne, and that's how he went. And they obviously foreshadow that heavily in the first episode, but kind of tough, right? It's like, yeah, peaceful king, more or less effective, but he's kind of soft, and he went out in a soft way.
Yeah. It's so tough because I think in these worlds, if you have even like the an ounce of like tenderness, it's just you're not long for the world. Something we didn't talk about. Damon, his absence is a big talking point at the beginning, and then he finally does show up and just starts wrecking shit. Just
Yeah,
starts rounding up people
yeah.
who are accused
The
of crimes.
the gold cloaks, the city watch has been radicalized under his command, basically.
Mhm. I thought that scene was just completely brutal. You see amputations, you see them,
Oh
cutting
yeah.
off body parts. It's really, really brutal, and that was kind of the moment where I was like, this is an aspect of Thrones where I'm not, I wasn't totally missing it. The goriness, and
Hmm.
they have talked about how in these the House of Dragon seasons, they're not going to show like rape scenes or things like that. That all the sex that you see will be consensual to some degree.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that that's a important choice. But just overall thoughts on just Damon and him wrecking shit, but also just the goriness of the show in general.
Yeah, I think there's those two big gory moments, right? Like you said, the gold cloaks wrecking shop in King's Landing, and then the montage of the tourney and the birth.
Hmm.
Um, that's a lot. It's definitely a lot, And I think at the end of the day, it's an R-rated series, and it'll continue to be that. But I don't expect to see like wanton gore every episode because that's not how Game of Thrones was either. So I think you just kind of have to roll with that, right?
Yeah.
didn't necessarily mind seeing it though, in the sense that they're kind of reestablishing the throne's POV, as it were, in terms of violence. But yeah, I mean, I think not seeing sexual violence moving forward is totally fine. It doesn't somehow negate the brutality of Westeros in any way, so
Mhm.
that's great. Um, I think my other big scene that I was a big fan of was when you see Viserys down in the bowels of the Red Keep in front of Balerion, the Black Dread's skull, the dragon's skull, Aegon's dragon, kind of like in a shrine, you know, with all this bed of candles. Of course, when we see that skull via Tyrion in early Game of Thrones, is of course just kind of collecting cobwebs in the basement because the Targaryens no longer rule. But back then, it's like this big shrine, more or less, and that's where you get this revelatory scene to
Mhm.
the lore heads where Viserys tells his daughter Rhaenyra about this kind of assumed birthright or mission statement that the Targaryen lineage has passed down, where they are protecting the realm from the winter to come. Once summer finally ends, they need to unite everyone to defend the realm. And it's like, huh, that kind of agency had never been established by the Targaryen family. Kind of cool to hear that, you know. Easter egg, he's holding the cat's paw dagger
Mhm.
while he's saying that. I didn't actually notice. I noticed it. I was like, oh, it's a cool looking dagger. I didn't recognize it as the cat's paw from early Game of Thrones. But alas, I think that was definitely a cool scene, and it'll be interesting if that kind of sense of purpose and responsibility affects one or both of the sides to come, probably Rhaenyra's side in the conflict. But yeah, I think that was definitely a cool moment to see.
Definitely cool to see. Cool to see that Valyrian steel really don't crack. I mean, damn, the cat's paw lasted like over 200 years. That's
At
insane.
least, yeah,
That's crazy. Um, and yeah, I think because whether if you're a casual viewer or even if you're more of a lore head, like um, you where Game of Thrones starts. Targaryens are pretty much on the outs, and Dany and her brother are trying to bring them back into prominence.
they're
And
the only ones.
yes, and so um, to kind of hear where they were as a people and as a house, and to know that they're kind of setting this up as like, yeah, we're it, and like it's always kind of meant to be this way according to the visions of Aegon, and to see how far that they're going to fall. You just know that they're in
Mhm.
for a lot of tragedy
Yeah,
and heartbreak in the coming seasons. I mean, I assume it's probably going to be like a less long running series. I don't think it'll go 7 or 8 seasons, probably like 4 or 5.
right.
But I mean, there's a lot here, a lot to dig into.
Yeah, and then that also brings the question: is if you look at like the bio that the House of the Dragon has on on HBO, like like just how it's like listed in like in marketing and stuff, it's almost positioned as House of the Dragon is a show about the Tarks, and perhaps we have a 2-3 season run about the Dance with the Dragons, and then they keep quote House of the Dragon going, and we go to something else,
Hmm.
whether that's Aegon's conquest or the Doom of Valyria, the Targaryens fleeing something, interesting thought that this could almost be a Westeros anthology, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of intriguing stuff to do with the Targaryens. If you wanted, I mean, it feels like Aegon's conquest is an easy one to do eventually, not one that's been reported in development. So I don't know about that, but yeah, this is not going to be an 8 season run for sure. Doesn't need to be, and I think it'll probably be better for it that this is going to be more succinct but fun to invest in. It's um, that's awesome, and I yeah, I think it's just really great to be back in the world, and who knows if we'll hear any news about future spin-offs. We did have the kind of breaking news right before this about the Jon Snow sequel series that George
Mhm.
himself did even comment on his blog. But in the meantime, I'm like I said, I'm happy to be with this prequel status, and we can just kind of chop it up in Westeros and watch some good old fashioned succession fights. Sounds great.
Yeah, completely agree. And we aren't the only ones. 10 million people apparently were tuned into this for the premiere. There
Yeah.
are amazing videos of apartment buildings in New York City where you look up at the windows and the lights are moving in unison because everybody's watching Game of Thrones at the same, or sorry, House of Dragon at the same time. It's pretty amazing to have
I
a
know.
show back that brings people together this way.
Yep. And in what, 2 weeks is it? Not even?
Yeah,
No, sorry, a week from Friday, we get Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power on Amazon. It's gonna be crazy to see these two shows at the same time.
fantasy shows. This has to be the height of them, right? I mean,
Yeah. It's so
two
funny
shows
to
this expensive.
totally. And it's so funny we talked about the next Game of Thrones for so long, right? Talking about shows like The Wheel of Time or The Nevers or Foundation, whatever it was. It's like, you know what? No, we got Game of Thrones and we got the next best thing. We got Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
Nobody else needs to try anymore.
yeah, exactly. Anyways, we're gonna wrap up there for this week. Dave, what do we got for next week?
Yeah, so next week I think it's not quite as monumentous as the week we just had, but we got a bunch of interesting music. Jid album, Michi Darko from Flatbush Zombie solo album, Twice EP, Muse album. We'll be finally be talking about Westworld season 4. We've been putting it off and putting it off. We will be discussing it, and also George Miller. Remember him? His
Yeah.
first movie since Mad Max Fury Road is coming out.
Oh hell
3,000
yeah!
Years of Longing with Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba.
Let's go.
I wish this movie was getting more press, but this is literally the follow up to Mad Max Fury Road. And
Awesome.
yeah, that's cool.
Can't,
Let's talk
can't
about
wait to talk about it.
a late August movie, and it happens to be from George Miller. I mean, we could be doing worse.
We could definitely be doing worse. SoundCloud.com/nostalgiapod. If you really want to go OG, you go to youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Give us a subscribe, and also go to Twitter, search at nostalgiapod, follow the account there, and then hit the link tree to follow us any way that you want to. We'll catch you next week.